Join me, Harriet Gould, for the Lab Matters podcast to hear fascinating stories every week from the inspiring people behind the science. In this episode of Lab Matters with me, Harriet Gould, investor Warren Packard extols the virtues of being a generalist. Today, we are joined by Warren Packard. Now, Warren's the real deal when it comes to something that actually could be construed as unreal, because it's got artificial in the title. But no, seriously, Warren Packard, you work currently at the AI fund, but you've had a pretty extensive run of it in terms of venture capital, and this has been predominantly in the AI space. We could call you an AI funding pioneer, practically, couldn't we?
Well, actually, I probably would pull back on that a little bit because certainly I was aware of artificial intelligence fairly early on. I do remember back in the late 80s that there was this, when I was in school, there was a guy that was building some sort of measurement platform, and he was using that as a substrate for doing some kind of AI measurement, metrics or something. I don't. It was obviously beyond my capability at the time, but I was aware that there was these things called neural networks, and that we were trying to mimic the human brain and how the brain works. That was my first introduction, but just to be very candid, my real first introduction into AI was around 2014 or so. So it's about 11 years ago when I took a class all about machine learning and deep learning from Andrew Ng, who we'll spend a little bit of time talking about for sure. But he founded Coursera, which is an educational website. And through Coursera, he has taught millions of software engineers the trade of machine learning, deep learning, artificial intelligence. And so I kind of think of him as like the Taylor Swift of computer science, because everybody knows him in his blue button-down shirt, his very calm demeanor, his clear explanations. But in any event, to make a long story short, I took his class then. I then took a whole deep learning set of courses from him. Again, I didn't know him. I was just one of his online students. I did that like probably in 2021 or something like that. It was one of the COVID skills that I picked up. And then next thing I know, I'm partnering with him at AI Fund. And we're partners together, and we're investing, not only investing in AI companies, but we're creating AI companies. So anyway, going back to your original point, I'm not an AI pioneer by any stretch compared to Andrew Ng, who truly is an AI pioneer. But I myself have been aware of AI for many years, and I can say I've been in the space, broadly speaking, for 11.
Mm, mm. It's such a topical point because now, especially in with data science and how the software companies are transforming the way that people handle the data and decipher the data, I suppose it's got mixed responses. A lot of people are very excited about it, and some people are terrified and skeptical. And I just wonder. I don't know whether we should talk about that. I mean, I think we should, but I don't know if we should now. But I don't. Well, why not? Let's do it now. Um,
No better time than the present.
what do you come across when people speak to you about it? Is that skepticism prevalent?
So uncertainty is prevalent for sure in terms of where we're going. Skepticism is somewhat prevalent. In fact, I the skepticism usually comes in the form of is there anything behind this AI stuff? Does this AI stuff even work? I tried it a little bit, but it didn't give me a great answer or whatever. And when I get that type of skepticism, my quick response always is just if something's not working for you today, just wait 1 month because it's improving so quickly. But if you're talking about skepticism in terms of how it will help our lives writ large and how it will help our lives versus will it cause disruption to our lives? Will it, in fact, even perhaps be negative to our lives? That's healthy skepticism, and it's worth talking about because the impact of AI is uncertain. Whether it will, well, it's certainly going to do a bunch of good, but I also know, if you will, and maybe know is the incorrect word, but I can look into the future and I know it's going to do some bad too. Because with any technology disruption, there's going to be things that happen that are unexpected, unintended consequences. And there's no doubt that with the power of what AI brings to bear, there will absolutely be unintended consequences. And that's I, I guess I'll say use the word inevitable. It's inevitable that that will happen. And we can talk more about, why I believe this, all the same. But every now and then somebody will come up and say, you've got to stop what you're doing. And when they say stop what you're doing, they don't mean me specifically individually. They mean you, the AI community.
Mm.
But most people are excited about that. I mean, just there's no doubt about that. But there's absolutely some folks who are concerned all the way to scared.
Mm.
And there's nothing wrong with being concerned. There's nothing wrong with being scared. Um, we should all be very alert to what is happening, and we should all be very informed about what is happening. Uh, but in general, it's we're in for quite a ride
Quite all right. Quite
going
all right.
forward.
So before we go on to that, then where did this whole ride start for you? I mean, you went to Stanford, but there was a bit of a life before that. Let's and you're in California right now, aren't you?
That's right. I'm in
Yeah.
California now. I grew up in the Chicago area,
Hmm.
so in Illinois in the States. Um, so a suburb. We both know have a common friend that lives in the Chicago area. He's an individual that I went to high school with, and so we go back to Highland Park, Illinois, where I'm from originally, which is it's a middle class, upper middle class suburb of Chicago. Um, night, fine neighborhoods, good schools, good upbringing. I, I don't, it's interesting. I became an engineer ultimately
Mm.
as my first career, and that's what I studied at Stanford University. But the interesting thing about Highland Park and really the surrounding suburbs is there wasn't that much engineering around. I didn't have many role models as an engineer. There's a lot of folks. It's a professional community, so in the sense that there are business folks, there are physicians, there are lawyers, there are of, this person was a manager or a vice president, this person was a doctor.
Hmm.
But there wasn't this, it's not like Silicon Valley where I am today, where the first thing out of people's mouths is like, oh, that person's a CEO. That person runs a startup. That person runs Facebook or Meta or whatever. So I had very different role models growing up, but a few folks that were around the area were doing engineering. And and it was really interesting to get this window into something that I knew so little about. And it was just as computers were emerging, because I went to high school 1981 to 1985. And this was a really seminal time for the personal computer. So Apple was launched, and there was the Apple II, the Apple II Plus, the Apple IIe. Um, Commodore had these computers out, the PET, the Commodore 64, Atari had a computer, Tandy Radio Shack had a computer. Anyway, I won't go into the history of personal computers, but I would see these computers, and there'd be like in our school, we'd have one computer or maybe two computers. And there were always a few people hammering away at the computer doing something that was magical. I just wanted to play games. And the games at those times were very rudimentary, very primitive. In fact, they started off being text-based games where there were no graphics at all, and then they became very simple graphics. But it was kind of like the interest in games got me interested in how do you create these games, got me interested in programming, and then got me into these conversations with the few individuals who were interested in these, and they tended to be the kids of engineers. And I ended up getting really excited about engineering. And when I applied to college, I was, in fact, when I applied to college, I wasn't even applying into engineering programs because I, again, didn't even think that that was a career or whatever. But uh, an individual who heard that I was going to go to Stanford said, no matter what you do leaving college, you can get an engineering degree, and that engineering degree will set you up very well because engineering is all about a way of thinking and
Mm.
a way of approaching problems. And it
How would
doesn't
you
matter whether you're in business or not. You can use that approach.
how would you define that way of thinking?
You'd think after all these years, I'd have a really good, sharp answer to that. It's just a way of breaking down problems, stating your assumptions, understanding the inputs, and knowing that everything is a trade-off. So there's no absolute answers to anything. If I was going to design something, I could design it an infinite number of ways. If I'm going to write an essay, I could write that essay an infinite number of ways. If I'm going to create a business, I could create it an infinite number of ways. So there's no, there are better answers. There's no right or wrong answer, but there's better and worse answers. But there's always trade-offs. And just to think about trade-offs in a very clear, intellectually honest mind. And that's the way I guess I can really say, like, I'm a designer. And so you can design things, you can design businesses, you can design venture capital funds, you can design countries, you can design a world, if you were. But you need to understand that there's always trade-offs. And that's always, it's been very interesting when you listen to politicians, for instance, they usually work in absolutes. Because of how politics works. But as an engineer, you hear these absolutes, and you're always like, but there's the gray in between. It's not like we absolutely need to fund this proposition, or we can't fund this proposition. We need to do, but it's the gray area in between. And I guess I'm bringing this up in politics just because it seems we've lost our ability to debate because
No
we're
kidding.
polarized. But anyway, getting back to engineering, you can't be polarized in engineering. You have to look at the trade-offs, and you have to be honest with yourself about what works, what doesn't, prototype quickly, get user feedback quickly, iterate. These are all very important.
Mm,
So anyway, that's the engineering mindset, I guess, in a sense, is try things out, break things, iterate to a point where you get something that really works well.
mm, nice. You distracted me by bringing up politics now. We won't go down that road. So you were advised to do the engineering and you went for it. Um,
That's right. Yes. So if we go to my college years, I studied mechanical engineering at Stanford. A bunch of my friends were studying electrical engineering and computer science. And it was really interesting. Like mechanical engineering is very hands-on. You go to the machine shop and you make something. You study stress and strain in materials. You study thermodynamics, how temperatures flow. You study design and design methodologies, how you build things, how you think creatively, how you brainstorm. And I love that. It was very far-reaching. But I was also looking at my friends who were doing electrical engineering and computer science, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool too. Even though, like, so I was dealing with like atoms, and the electrical engineers were dealing with electrons, and the computer scientists were dealing with bits. And I was like, they kind of see, even though they're so different, they seem similar. And so I started taking a bunch of electrical engineering and computer science classes because I wanted to see what that was all about. And by the way, Stanford also encourages humanities and such. So I took a bunch of humanities classes as well. But I'm only going to talk mainly about the engineering for the moment. Um, I ultimately got to a point where my senior year, I was doing some research in robotics, and specifically with robotic hands. So, like how a robotic hand would pick something up, and especially something like a styrofoam cup full of coffee. Because if you have a robotic hand, you can't grab it too strong, it'll crush and the coffee will go everywhere. Or you can't grab it too light, or it'll slip right out. So, how do you create a hand that knows its environment and can pick something up? gently but accurately, if you will. Anyway, what's the point? The point is robotics integrates or synthesizes mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and computer science all together. You need all three. You can't do without any one of those disciplines. And so I stuck around to continue to do, after my undergraduate, to do some research in robotics. And I took a core sequence in what was known at the time as smart product design or mechatronics, which is the synthesis of computer science, electrical engineering, and mechanical engineering. And it was absolutely delightful. And it almost goes back to my point about enjoying games back in the early 80s, where I was just fascinated with games, so I wanted to build games. Like building robots and doing robotic research to me was like a game. It was fun. It was so interesting. And I was like, so how do you build these things? And so I got to build these things, and it was really fascinating. And it's interesting, like the robotics revolution hasn't really taken, we'll talk about this more, but it hasn't really taken off yet in the sense like
On
we
the
don't have,
cusp.
it is on the cusp, absolutely on the cusp. And it's so funny that there I was working on that back in the late 80s in robotics. And again, and by no means was I a pioneer in that space, but it was, I just happened to be there, in the room where it happened, so to speak. So yeah, so I ended up with doing my master's degree, did some research in robotics and robotic hands. And then I had to decide whether to get a PhD and just continue down that path, or to follow my girlfriend at the time back to Chicago, where she was going to go to medical school, and I would have to get a job. And I opted for the latter. So instead of taking a PhD route, I went into industry, and I ended up working at a company called Baxter Healthcare Corporation. And at Baxter, I designed kidney dialysis machines or artificial kidneys. And that was a really interesting experience because I have to be very honest, like I'm not the medical guy. My girlfriend, now wife, she was definitely the medical person. And for me, it was like I don't like to, I don't like the sight of blood or whatever. And here I am designing artificial kidneys. The whole idea is to clean blood. And so like entering a domain that I feared and didn't want to be in, and it was great. uh, and so I ended up.
Did she get involved? She give you advice?
Oh, so absolutely. It was fun because I was learning about the kidney in order to learn about how to make an artificial kidney. She was learning about the human body in general, but then in a way that was very different from me. But yet, I mean, there's obviously overlap. But yeah, we had some conversations about the kidney, renal function, how to clean blood, how to take liquid out of the blood, how to uh, provide nutrients into the blood. How, like very, very interesting conversations. And a number of my friends were also at the same medical school. And so we'd have these nerdy conversations about kidneys. And of course, that was the extent of my knowledge, that they would go off and talk about other organs and such in the body. But again, there was kind of a game or element to the job that I had because I was designing next generation dialysis machines. And, you got to build something. It was like Legos. Legos is kind of a game and kind of a building constructor set. And that's what I was doing in a way, is I was constructing prototypes that would carry out artificial renal function, artificial kidney function. And just the goal was to make them smaller, lighter, cheaper, and so that they could reside in the bedroom of these patients who had end stage renal disease. So they didn't have to go to the hospital and have their blood cleaned. They could just go to sleep and have their blood cleaned at night while they were sleeping and wake up with clean blood and then just do that every evening as opposed to going to the hospital a couple of days a week, which is a little bit more dramatic. It's kind of like you're scrubbing with a harder bristled brush twice a week when you go to the hospital, whereas you're scrubbing with a nice gentle cloth during the week if you're cleaning every day. Anyway, it was engineering. They put a lab coat on me, put safety glasses on me, locked the door in the lab, and I was designing away. And I ended up doing that for 4 years. And then my wife, well, she became my wife during that time. And we ended up going back to California for her residency. And that's when everything shifted because I went from being an engineer to being a business student. So I went to the Stanford Graduate School of Business, and that changed my life dramatically. That relocation, that repositioning. I'll pause there. I've been talking a lot. I don't know if you have some additional
Yeah, no, no,
questions
no.
about
That
that past, as this is a nice chapter to end on for the moment.
I think it's just lovely that that twice now your career has taken the shape that it did because of personal decisions that you made, and you prioritize that personal side of your life more than the business side. I like that. It's
Yeah,
encouraging.
it's a good point, and I appreciate you bringing that up because like so every now and then my wife will say, we'll use the word sacrifice, like it was a sacrifice, and it certainly wasn't. I mean, in one sense it was because we lived in downtown Chicago, which was close to her medical school, and I had to commute way up north and spend a lot of time in a car and commuting and things. And but putting that aside, the there is a bit of randomness in life, or perhaps there's a lot of randomness in life, and there's trade-offs. There's trade-offs in life, um, and so I certainly could have stayed at Stanford and gotten my PhD, or I could have gone to Illinois and worked in industry. And looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. I mean, I learned a lot, and it was great working for Baxter. It was great seeing a new industry. It was great putting to use in a very practical way my education in smart product design and mechatronics because our devices incorporated electrical engineering, computer science, and mechanical engineering. And then when I went back to Stanford for business school, um, I actually had a choice whether I went back to a PhD program or went into business. And one of the things that I learned at Baxter was that many of the decisions were being made in marketing and sales. The decisions were not being made in engineering and research. And for myself, I really wanted to be a decision maker. And the other thing I noted about myself is that I'm a generalist and not a specialist. And it's a very personal thing. Like some people are specialists, they want to get great at one thing, and it's awesome. And they're so good. And I'm always jealous of specialists. And in fact, just a side story while I was at Baxter, I worked with Dean Kamen. And Dean is the individual who invented the Segway scooter, if you know the upright Segway scooter. He mainly made his successful career in medical devices. And he did not work for Baxter. He had his own design company called DECA, which stands for Dean Kamen, DECA. And Dean was working with Baxter because he was also working on a next generation dialysis machine, just like I was. So we collaborated and in a way competed too, because we were doing two different projects, but it was a friendly uh, competition there. But I admired him so deeply because he was so good at engineering. He was so good at mechanical design. And that was his life. Now I'm definitely understating it. He was also a very shrewd business person. He had other dimensions, but he was definitely much more of a specialist. And part of my admiration of what he did from time to time led me to say, gosh, I really want to emulate that. I want to be a specialist. But I could never do that because inherently I'm a generalist. And what that means is I just want to know a little, I have to be content, and I am content with knowing a little bit about lots and lots of things, as opposed to knowing a lot about a small thing, if you will. And again, nothing Dean Kamen did was small. He did just some extraordinary things. But just those two personalities became very clear to me. And that really informed my background and my what I did in terms of going to business school versus going to the PhD program. Business school, great for generalists. PhD program, great for specialists. Venture capital will eventually end up coming out of business school, great for generalists. Entrepreneurship, starting a company, great for specialists. And I've actually done both in my career, probably because that personal jealousy of people who are specialists keeps raising its head, if you will. But I can never escape the fact that I'm a generalist and appreciate I want to know a little bit about a lot, and it's kind of fun. So, in any event, ended up going to business school, becoming a generalist. So now I knew engineering. Now I knew, well, knowing business is not really right. I learned about business. I still had to put that into practice. But business school, it's a part fun, part education, working. But I was very fortunate to be in Silicon Valley. Uh, I was in Silicon Valley at business school from 95 to 97 as the browser was being launched, as Netscape was getting formed, as the internet was morphing into the World Wide Web, and having a front row seat into the growth of the internet and the internet revolution uh, really had a significant impact on where I went from there. And I'll pause at that moment.
Do you recognize any similarities between how it felt then and how it feels now on the brink of robotics and artificial intelligence and machine learning?
Yes and no. So the yes part is the energy and excitement, the I keep using the word the knowledge, but it's like a foresight, if you will, that this is going to have a material impact on our lives.
Mm.
It's all there. And so back then, as the internet was, as a web, I have to be careful because the internet had been around for decades. But the World Wide Web and the browser and what that meant, that interface to the internet, that was brand new. And you could tell it was going to have a material impact on our lives. And it was happening so quickly. And now with AI, you just know it's going to have a material impact on our lives. It's happening so quickly, and there's so much energy around that. So in that vein, it's very similar. One of the primary differences, though, that I can see when the when the web revolution, I'll just call it the internet revolution, took off, the public markets took off at the same time. And so you had this, I'll just call it insanity of companies starting and going public so quickly and getting valuations in the public markets that were indefensible. And so you saw this incredible growth, this incredible movement of money, of capital into these markets, and then the inevitable correction when as we say, the bubble burst in 2000. But the companies that had built real sustainable value, they kept going. And new companies emerged out of that bubble bursting. I mean, of course, Google started before the bubble burst, but it certainly hit its stride after the bubble burst. And so you can look at a company like Google and say, hey, it's a post-bubble company. Anyway, but getting back to the point is that the markets went nuts and incredible amounts of capital went in. At this point in time in the AI revolution, the markets have not gone nuts. Definitely an incredible amount of capital is going in, but to specific companies in specific areas of the AI revolution. So we're talking about like semiconductors. You can see what's going on with NVIDIA, for instance, or foundation model companies like OpenAI or Anthropic that are creating the foundation layer of AI. Some of these cloud companies that are, the cloud companies are mainly incumbents. So we're talking about Google and the Google Cloud. We're talking about Amazon and AWS. We're talking about Microsoft and Azure. And certainly there's a lot of capital and investment that's going in, but the public markets have not yet taken off with the type of insanity. So you could say, on the one hand, maybe, the market, obviously, the geopolitical, economic environment is very different, but maybe there's also a discipline. And I'd like to think that that is also there, where we're not going to take companies public that don't have any revenue and
Mm,
that are unprofitable and that are not safe investments for, um, I'll just say amateur investors, if you will, versus professional investors. So that's a big, big difference. And that's fine. That's fine. But hopefully, as companies mature and they get to profitability, the public markets will open up and then more amateur investors, the wrong word, but I'll just keep using it. Amateur investors can get involved and take advantage of a revolution that's taking place in front of our eyes.
mm. And just, I don't want to come away from that, but I wonder if, because you probably know a little bit more about that than I do, the investment market. When you say amateur investors, you're talking about people like me doing some investing individual as an individual. Um, I wonder if there's even a real strong market for that at the moment, probably bigger in America, but it seems to me that in the UK at least from my perspective, people tend to use funds and rely on someone else to choose the stock, and it's quite remote now. I wonder if that's a thing that has changed since the World Wide Web boom.
It's I'm not a professional public market investor, although of course I do have public equities and all that. So I'll make a few comments as an amateur. This is an amateur response
We're
here.
all, I'm an amateur.
There
I
you
don't know what I'm
go.
talking about. It's fine.
Every individual should have a sense for what their investment portfolio should be, in the sense that, we should all be diversified. We
Yeah.
should be sitting on some cash. We should have some money in the bank. We should be earning a little bit of interest on that money in the bank. We should have some retirement accounts if we're fortunate enough to be in that position. Then maybe we could have some, bonds in our portfolio. And then maybe we should have some public equity represented by like a mutual fund or represented by some kind of bucket of public equities, an index fund, if you will.
Mm,
And then as we get riskier and riskier, perhaps we have individual public equities, so a stock in a single company. Or if you're really, really risky, you actually get involved with private equity, with buying stock in private companies. But all of us should start from that foundation layer where it's basically cash on hand, a bit of money in the bank. And
mm,
that's a great, awesome place to start. And, so going all the way up the ladder of investments to ultimately like, should we be buying individual stocks in public companies? Um, if one has some discretionary savings that can be put at risk, it's an interesting thing to consider.
mm,
But for most individuals, a conservative, diversified portfolio is the way to go. And ultimately, if you're investing, like if the market goes up in general, we'll see that even in our smaller portfolios. We'll
mm,
see that in the interest rates that the banks can give to us for holding on to our money. We'll see that in our IRA or whatever retirement account that we might have. We'll see it in the mutual fund or an index fund. And that's fine. Because right now, there's a lot of uncertainty in where these companies are going. And if you invest in an individual company, certainly all of us say, boy, wouldn't it be great if I had invested in that one great company that made it all the way to the top? In retrospect, we know the winners. But the reality is, we talk about the winners. We typically don't talk about the ones that didn't make it. And there's a lot more companies that don't make it than do. And
mm.
so it's typically not a good domain for amateur investors, if you will, you and me.
I think that's
That's it.
very sound commentary, Warren. I like that. Um, so then back now, where are we?
I guess I'm in business school and
We are
graduate.
you're in business school, and I feel like we need to condense a little bit, but don't worry about that
Yes,
too
we
much.
definitely do. Oh, you know what? That's
Um,
right. We did get into the internet revolution. So how did I get
yeah.
into that? I'll speed things up a bit, and you can slow me down at any point. But emerging out of business school, I was very fortunate and joined a venture capital firm. And that's where this fund was.
How did that come about?
Right. Yeah, it's not every day that one gets invited into a venture capital fund. So it really serendipity took place. The fact is, it just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and had the right network or relationships. So while I was in business school, I started a company. We called it Angara Database Systems. And I won't go into all the details, but it was a database company. So it was kind of like a core technology company. Started with a friend of mine that was still there at Stanford getting his PhD. And in order to get the company off the ground, we needed some money. So we went around and knocked on the doors of venture capital firms and said, hey, will you fund our database company? And one of the companies that I visited was a company, a venture firm called Draper Fisher Associates. And I visited that firm because the new associate slash partner at that fund was a guy named Steve Jurvetson. And Steve and I had gone to Stanford together. We had gone to undergraduate together. And so here I was with this company that I'd started with my friend who also was in the same graduating class at Stanford. And so I said, Steve, you gotta meet with us. We're starting a company. And Steve did. And he invited, I don't remember all the specifics of that one meeting, either one or both the other two partners, Draper and Fisher. And we had a meeting and we presented our company. And they opted not to invest in the company, which is fine. I mean, your chance of getting investment from a venture firm are fairly low. So again, not the right decision nor the wrong decision, just their decision. But it was my first exposure to Draper Fisher Associates. And over my tenure in business school, because I was still in school, I hired in a CEO to run this database company. I hired in a head of marketing, hired in a head of engineering. So basically, as I was in business school, focused on both business school and this company, I was basically hiring for a real company and hired myself out of a job, basically. So when I was graduating from business school, I got a call from Draper Fisher Associates saying, hey, we're looking for somebody else to join us. There's this internet web thing that's taking off. We need someone else to help us think through these things and identify startup companies to invest in. And I met with them. And of course, I knew Steve from undergraduate, and I'd known these guys from at least that one meeting. And it was a great match. So right place, right time. I had a business degree. I had an engineering background. I'd started a company. And they were like, great, jump on in. Let's see how this goes. And it was a wild ride. And it was a great, for the next 3 years, any investment we made was worked out well because you could do no wrong. Then probably for the next 3 years, any investment we made didn't work out well. And then things stabilized a bit. But we ended up I was there for 13 years. And the firm became known as Draper Fisher Jurvetson. Steve got his name on the door. And then it became known as DFJ. And the DFJ Growth, which is another fund that stemmed from that, they're still around. DF and J have gone slightly separate ways, but all done incredibly well. But during that time that I was there for 13 years, we backed and we were the initial institutional investors in many well-known companies. So Hotmail was one of those companies. Skype was one of those companies. Baidu out of China was one of those companies. Box. We backed Elon's cousins in a company called Everdream and another company called Solar City. We backed Elon in Tesla and SpaceX and many other companies, dozens of other companies. And many of them went out of business because we made a good effort. We tried and we didn't succeed. And a handful of them went on to tremendous success, whether they were companies that went public or were acquired. It was just a really fun set of years, all the way till 2010. And then at that point, I guess that other voice in my head that said, hey, wouldn't it be cool to be a specialist? Um, I started a company.
Again.
And that was another very interesting turning point in my life because I'm a sports fan and I was just sitting down watching an American football game one day, and it was the most boring game I had ever seen. So I had all these idle brain cycles to think about other things, and I thought about a company in sports technology and just started building it and
Hmm.
invited my friends to join me as co-founders. And the next thing you know, I had a company, and that wrote the chapter for the next 10 years of my life.
And let's just go into a little bit because I mean I did actually read this on your bio and it really piqued my interest because it seems like a dream from a commercial perspective. So um we're talking about advertising and
That's right.
audiences. It's but so just talk us through what that company actually provided.
Right. So the initial product set surrounded measuring real-time excitement in sports events. The idea that,
I.e., how excited a person watching
right,
actually felt.
right. And the whole notion was to measure excitement so that you can then communicate that to the whole population, say, look, Arsenal is playing Tottenham right now. It's 1-1. It's the 85th minute. It's this is it's incredibly important to the Premiership and what happened. It's like it's in April and it's going to mean everything to the leaderboard. You should be watching this now. And the whole idea is that, maybe I don't know how many people watch these matches, but like a million people were watching, and now suddenly 10 million people are watching, or maybe 10 million were watching, now 100 million, whatever the case is. Like, this match is exciting. It's genuinely, so you should be pulled in. And so we had this rating system. It was all personalized for your preferences about which sports you love, which teams you love. We had an alert system that sent out alerts. We had a headline system that created real-time headlines to tell you why it was exciting. And then we had AI analysis of the video, the live stream of the game. And we were able to correlate the excitement going on with the live stream to create real-time personalized highlights of the game. So if you were to tune into a match, let's say, we could catch you up to live. We could give you 2 minutes of the match to show you what happened and then get you into the live match so you knew everything that took place. And then after the match, we could give you any arbitrary highlight reel, whether you wanted a 2 minute highlight, a 10 minute highlight, a 30 minute highlight, whether your favorite team was Tottenham. So let's watch that. Let's give them more time on the highlight, or your favorite team are the Gunners. Let's give you more time with that. Or you're a neutral fan. You love Chelsea, and but you still want to watch that match. We'll give you that. Or you want to watch all the Premiership matches in 15 minutes. We'll give you that. Now, of course, we couldn't do that without the rights. And so our customers were the folks who own the rights to this content, who wanted to draw on more fans, whether prior to an event, during an event, or after an event. So that was called Thews Sports. That was the company that I co-founded and built up over a 10-year period before ultimately selling the company to another global sports technology company.
What fun. I mean, it sounds like you had a complete ball.
Yes. It's fun when you can, again, back to games, right? So I love games, and sports, of course, it's a game. And the fact that I could combine my passion for sports with my passion for technology.
Mm.
And it gets me into the latest and most novel technology. We had to apply AI. I mentioned in 2014, I took my first AI class, and that's right in the middle. I built Thews from 2010 through 2020. And so I got into AI because when you're analyzing video and you have to watch, like a cricket match and see, when the batsman, hits the ball, and that point of contact, that moment of contact, AI can do that. AI, it's computer vision. So we had to get into computer vision, AI, in order to perform all the engineering tasks that we needed to perform in order to create an entertainment movie, a video. And we
Mhm.
could do this all in real time. So it had to work at speed as well. We couldn't just create something that slowly worked after a match was over. No, it had to all be in real time.
instant gratification. That's
Yes, yes,
the nature of the modern world. Um, so now, I mean, we should probably draw this to a close because there's not enough time left to carry on for to talk about all the millions of things that there are probably still left to talk about. Um,
true.
so now we're in this strange zone now where things are about to take off. They're not going mad, and people are a little bit nervous that we're going to start creating robots that are going to think like robots, and we're going to get people that are trying to think more like robots rather than have those machines start to think like humans and support the human thought process. What are your hopes for where things will go, and what if there was one thing at this stage that you could change, what do you think it might be?
The short answer to that is I am hoping and pulling for and working for augmentation, not automation. And that's really key.
Hmm.
Augmentation means AI is augmenting human performance, human knowledge, humanity, as opposed to automation, where it's replacing or substituting for humanity. Now, I mean, there's a lot of automation. In fact, I called our platform, our sports platform, automated highlight reels. So it was automation. But really, what we need to strive for is augmentation. And again, whether it's knowledge augmentation or robotic, mechanical, physical augmentation. There's no doubt that AI is going to be smarter than us. It's been trained on the entire knowledge base of the world. It knows every language in the world. It knows every fact. It's incredibly good at finding the needle in the haystack. You don't want to go up against an AI in a trivia competition. It's darn good. So, from a knowledge standpoint, AI is already and will continue to be better and better than humans alone. The same will be said for robotics. Today, you would not get a haircut from a robot, or at least I wouldn't, speaking for myself.
I might.
But one day we will. And robots will be much more adept, much more agile, nimble, dexterous. Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind. But how do you apply that? Do you apply that to substitute for humans, or do you apply that to augment humans? And my push is for augmentation. We can we can benefit from this greater knowledge augmenting what we have inside, our creativity, our empathy, our emotions. Just and there's so much that we have to offer that's different, but it's complementary. And when it comes to robotics, as I get a little older, I guess every year I grow a year older as far as I've been informed, like, boy, wouldn't it be nice to be augmented robotically? As little parts of me start to fail, like my kidneys, for instance, have that artificial kidney be with me, be in me, be augmenting me, have artificial limbs augment me and help me out as I'm slowing down, as my stability erodes, as my sense of balance erodes. It's going to be, I'm very fortunate. We're all fortunate to be living in this era because medical technologies are going to advance very, very quickly. Um, and so one thing to know is, yes, I'm saying that AI is going to be superior in many respects to us. But, and I was talking about Tottenham and Arsenal a moment ago, those are the best athletes in the world. But we also have passion for like the under 19. And we have passion for our kids playing soccer. And we have passion for, the neighborhood teams. I guess FA Cup is a perfect example where you've got all these teams competing to just try to, and you're rooting for them. You're rooting for them no less, well, maybe a little less than, your premiership team. I don't know, but it's your local team. And your local team is worse, sorry to say, than every single premiership team. They just are. But that doesn't we don't lose the passion for them. And that's the great thing, is that even if AI is superior to us and could play football, as we've been discussing, better than any other footballer, the truth is that we won't lose passion for every level of football. Or in our country, where we have basketball at all levels, the college basketball tournament, the high school basketball, we appreciate it just as much. A Formula One race car drives faster than the fastest human being who's running around a track. And we root for the car and we root for the driver, but we also root for that sprinter and that miler and the marathoner. And that's the thing, is that being better in an absolute sense is not what matters. What matters for us is effort and energy and enthusiasm and attempt. And that is what makes us who we are as humans. And so we can coexist, we can be augmented by AI and not lose our humanity.
Mm. Mm. What a wonderful point to end this conversation on, Warren. It's been really fascinating having you here talking to us today. Thank you so much for the time you've given it.
Thanks, Harriet. This was a great, very interesting conversation. I never quite know what's going to spew forth here, but fascinating discussion.
It was great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Did you enjoy that episode of Lab Matters? If you did, please do send it to the people that you think will enjoy it the most.